I mentioned before that there's quite a big lapse between me actually recording these videos and getting them uploaded online. There's a gap from 6 months to a year, I think. So it's quite interesting when I'm editing a video. I'm looking back into the past, and it's interesting to see where I was at then with where I perceive myself to be now. And I was editing video number 332, and I was clearly going through a difficult time, not just with my body but with my moods. And I was dealing with an encroaching grumpiness. There's this phenomenon whereby angry young men gradually metamorphose into grumpy old men. Something to watch out for, fellows. And there are certain times where this grumpiness is most prevalent. For example, just before getting up in the morning, or perhaps going to work. I've often found myself being quite grumpy though when I'm having to wash. Anyway, the point here is that I don't seem to be so bothered by this grumpiness anymore. In fact, recently I've been in quite a good mood. And this is possibly because the teachings are effective. Spiritual practice is effective. Now, I talk about spiritual practice, and I think we've probably all got our own idea about what spiritual practice is. But I wonder if you've been following these videos, what you understand when I talk about spiritual practice. In fact, I prefer not to talk about spiritual practice. I prefer to talk about enlightenment practice. Enlightenment is a practice. And in order to practice enlightenment, we have to have some realization of enlightenment. And it's quite possible you can do what the Buddha did on the eve of his own enlightenment. You look back through your life to a point where everything seemed to aright itself. You saw things from a deeper level of insight to that which is normal. So this was the Buddha. He remembered an incident when he was a teenager. For me, I'm not sure I remembered such incidents, but the penny dropped when I was reading the first couple of pages of a book by Douglas Harding called On Having No Head. And my exploration into these ancient scriptures, these ancient books of wisdom, is a way of consolidating that, of exploring what Douglas Harding means by headlessness, exploring from an experiential point of view. So for some people, spiritual practice might be about applying techniques, applying certain meditative techniques, or trying to modify your behavior and your lifestyle in certain ways. But this isn't what enlightenment practice is about. Enlightenment practice is about practicing enlightenment. Sometimes that's easy, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's just not going to happen. So I generally don't talk about techniques, but just for the record, there are a couple of techniques which, well, one technique is absolutely essential, and the other one I'm going to mention is very, very useful. So one technique is being able to observe your feelings and your thoughts and your moods. Your feelings and thoughts actually constitute your moods. So it's being able to observe your mood. And being able to observe is quite different from judging your mood. Being able to observe is quite different from making any kind of mental or verbal comment about your mood. You make a note of it and that's that. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're just going to trigger another mood. And that mood will lead into another mood and so on. We're caught up in this pattern of moods which constitutes what we could call a personal psychology. So we need to be able to observe quite ardently and forensically. So this can take a lot of practice, but it's essential, an essential technique to develop. The Buddhists call it mindfulness. Mindfulness of thought, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of body. So this is a very essential practice. If we cannot observe that we're in a mood, then we're going to be stuck in our moods. And in fact, if you're not enlightened right now, it's because you're in a mood. So this is really what we're struggling with. Sometimes these moods, in fact most of the time, moods are overwhelming. Even when we know we're in a mood, we can't get out of it, we're stuck. And this is where a second technique is very useful. And that is another Buddhist technique known as the mindfulness of breathing. It's something which I practiced formally quite a lot many years ago when I was a Buddhist. Nowadays, I do not sit in formal meditation. But if there's a storm going on here in my head and in my body, moods are being fueled by thoughts. These are generating feelings, and the feelings generate the thoughts, and the thoughts generate the feelings, and it's a mighty maelstrom of moods. This is the habit energy. Then sometimes I find it useful when you can't do anything. It's useful to come back to the breathing. The breathing is always going on. And it might sound rather boring, focusing on the breathing, but huge levels of subtlety open up. I particularly find that space between breaths after you've breathed out and you breathe in, can be quite a long gap where there's nothing happening and you're waiting for the next in-breath. There's a lot to explore there. And if you have trouble sleeping at night, sometimes this can help. So that's a useful technique. So I don't want to give the impression that I'm against techniques or I don't practice any techniques. Mindfulness of breathing, if you're looking for a practice, that's a pretty good one. If you're looking for a formal practice, that's a pretty good one to get on with. And as far as being an enlightenment practitioner, you need to be able to observe your moods at quite a forensic level. In that observation, we're actually stepping out of the moods. So, I said I've been in a pretty good mood these days, and good moods are difficult, because the thing about a good mood, even more than bad moods, is you feel completely justified in going with it. Throw yourself into the good mood. Great to be alive. Summer's here. The sun is shining. Whatever. And you might think, well, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is you're giving up on mindfulness. You're no longer observing your thoughts and your feelings. You're indulging them. And it might seem great for a while, but you'll come crashing down eventually. So in a way, dealing with good moods is quite an advanced stage of practice. And the trouble is, you might confuse a good mood with some kind of spiritual breakthrough. Now I feel in these teachings there are spiritual breakthroughs, and the last couple of weeks or so, in recent videos, the implications of these teachings are beginning to strike home. And the implication is that I can no longer indulge certain mood patterns. And this has been the case. Wonderful possibilities have been presenting themselves. The possibility, for example, speaking metaphorically, of seeing Buddhas from other universes. This is one way of describing it. This is very wonderful, isn't it? But this is the alternative to indulging or limiting rather grubby mood patterns. So, am I really capable of such a change? Well, I don't know. I don't know. I describe these videos as dispatches from the front line. I'm not some guru sitting in my golden throne dispensing platitudes from my state of enlightenment. It doesn't work that way. Enlightenment is an ongoing process that needs to be nurtured. It needs to be fed. It needs to be practiced. So I'm not selling you an idea here. I'm finding out if these teachings actually work or not. I don't want to be telling you something which I don't know from my own direct experience whether it's true or not. These teachings are 100% practical. They're to be put into practice. And this means becoming more and more established in enlightenment practice. There are still some acid tests which I need to put them to. And one quite good one is this waking up in the morning. You know, my body this morning was not very good. I've tried to cut back on the medications, so it was difficult to move again, and that affects my physiology, and that affects my mood. And my night shift, which is only a couple of nights a week, for the next couple of weeks it's going to be on Friday and Saturday, which are the most difficult nights. And in the past I've often felt quite panicky on the evenings when I have to do these night shifts. That panicky feeling seems to have disappeared, but we'll see how it is this weekend. So this night shift job is a good acid test for putting the teachings into practice. I'm going to be up all night, possibly having to deal with some very badly behaved customers. So that will be interesting. So this is the test. This is the test. Testing it in the arena of everyday life. Also with my wife. It's very easy to take out some of your deep frustrations on the ones that you're closest to. So this is something to watch out for. I need to be very mindful of my behaviour towards my wife. So being in a relationship is also a very good practice, very good opportunity to practice. So some acid tests there. And there's one or two other things that I want to say about enlightenment practice, and they're pertinent to the next couple of verses coming up, but I'm going to leave these until the next video.